You're listening to a Monster Kid podcast.
Welcome to A Dingo Ate My Movie, an Ozploitation podcast featuring weird and wonderful Australian exploitation movies from the 70s and 80s. Today I'm joined by Brandon to talk about The Man from Hong Kong, released in 1975. Stars Jimmy Wang Yu, George Lazenby, and was written and directed by Brian Trenchard-Smith. So Brandon, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thanks for being on my very first episode. This is great. So yeah, just want to start with, have you seen a lot of Ozploitation film in the past?
I haven't. This is kind of a blind spot for me. Even like action movies from the 70s, like from the US, I haven't seen a lot of those. I've seen, things like Mad Max, of course, and Death Wish, Roger Moore era James Bond, Dirty Harry, early Chuck Norris. A lot of those kinds of movies are what this reminds me of. But I haven't seen a single Bruce Lee movie. Sorry to say, but in terms of Ozploitation, I think the only thing that I've really seen it was probably Mad Max.
I think this movie's like a pretty good sort of intro into it. It's got one of the genre's sort of like most prominent directors. So Brian Trenchard-Smith did a pile of these films. So we've got this one. We've got things like, Dead End Drive-In. We've got Turkey Shoot that we'll end up doing, things like that. So he was a pretty prominent director. And a lot of the actors actually in this movie show up in a lot of other Ozploitation films as well. Jimmy Wang Yu, he plays Hong Kong Police Inspector Fang Sing Leng, who's sent to Australia to extradite a Chinese drug dealer, only to find himself in a battle to bring Sydney's most powerful crime lord to justice. So pretty straightforward sort of action movie plot, right?
Yeah.
The movie was a co-production between the movie company and Golden Harvest. So the movie company was Brian Trenchard-Smith's company and Greater Union. Greater Union's a movie exhibitor in Australia and New Zealand for a long time. They still have cinemas and do all that sort of stuff in Australia still these days. Golden Harvest is a exhibition company that's based in Hong Kong. It's now known, I think, as Orange Sky Golden Harvest. So it was a 50-50 split, and the budget for the film was originally around $450,000. That went up a little. I was only listening to the commentary this morning, and the budget did balloon out a bit. One of the things it ballooned out with is they wanted a few more action sequences, and then they paid for the rights to have that hit song Sky High on the soundtrack. So yeah, which is a great song, by the way. Did you like it?
I love that song.
It's such a great song.
Especially when it comes back there at the end. It's so fun.
And it's such an action movie kind of song, right? It's got that whole it's better. It's definitely better than the romantic song that plays over the romance scene.
Oh later. Yes, I can't wait to talk about that because I got some notes on it.
I actually spent probably half an hour last night wasting my time trying to figure out the lyrics. So yes, we'll get to that. Originally, Brian Trenchard-Smith had in mind that he would use Bruce Lee in this role. So he was working or heading to Hong Kong to actually work on a documentary with Bruce Lee around the time, I think it was when he was big. And the day he arrived for his connecting flight, he picked up a newspaper and saw that Bruce Lee had died. So this had happened like the very day he was supposed to be there meeting him. And he already had the script for this movie ready to show him and ask him if he'd be interested in being involved. So unfortunately, that's a bit of a bummer. Would have been interesting to see Bruce Lee in a movie like this.
Yeah. I mean, you can, even though I haven't seen a lot of Bruce Lee's stuff, you can definitely tell like that this would have been crafted just for him. It just seems like he would have been the perfect fit, like for this particular type of character and the type of hard-nosed nuance that the character has, and the romantic inclinations, but also the martial arts.
So the original title for this movie was, I couldn't believe this, was called Yellow Peril. Did you hear about that?
No.
Look at that at all. He was going to call it Yellow Peril, which look, we're back in the 70s. So I grew up a lot in the 70s. So we're talking mid-70s. And I think a lot of the racism wasn't really hidden right in the 70s. It was just very casual. It was a bit sad, actually.
Yeah.
So to call something Yellow Peril is quite over the top. And I think what I understand is that Golden Harvest said to him, no, we're not gonna use that as a title. And I think in the US it was released originally as The Dragonflies.
The Dragonflies, yeah. And I was wondering if maybe that was a reference to the scene whenever Ling is in that hang glider. But he's only in it for one scene, even though we see the hang glider quite a bit. He's only in it for, there towards the end.
So Jimmy Wang Yu also, he actually tried to get Brian Trenchard-Smith replaced a couple of times during the shoot. And Sandy Harbutt was approached. He was the guy that directed Stone, but he declined. But I think if you look at listen to the commentary or read anything from Brian Trenchard-Smith's point of view on this movie, you get the feeling that he was treated pretty poorly by Wang Yu in regards to how the movie in general. Apparently, they met up again a year or two after the movie was shot, and Wang Yu actually apologized for his behavior on the movie, which is kind of
nice. Yeah. I did read that he was notoriously difficult to work with.
Yeah, he was, and watching the movie again this morning and the commentary, the bit where they're having the fight in the lift in the elevator.
Yeah.
Apparently he beat so that's Brian Trenchard-Smith in that scene. He apparently hit him quite hard during those scenes. So he knocked him around a little.
Jimmy was just horrible.
Nasty piece of work.
One of the two worst people I've ever worked with in my life.
Hey, don't give me any shit.
He basically had no respect for anybody. White women were scum, and white actresses were worse than scum, and Rebecca, charming and wonderful she is, was of course therefore just a piece of dirt on the ground, and he had to do a love scene with her.
Do you think you've recovered enough for me to make love to you?
I think I could stand the pain.
He insisted upon catching flies from the air and eating them before he kissed her.
What? He what?
Look, I didn't warm to him.
Brian used to stand in for Jimmy in the love scene so that he could lie on top of Rebecca Gilling. And he'd say, this is the sort of angle, John, have a look at this. This is what you need. He's lying right on top of Rebecca, and she's lying there going,
What did you expect? Acupuncture?
Wang Yu was a top star in Asia, and he'd also directed 8 movies. And here was I, this kid, directing his first movie with a budget 4 times the size of anything that Wang Yu had had.
Jimmy Wang Yu wanted to be the boss of the show.
He wanted to be the director, and Brian was handling it so well.
He actually did a pretty good job because it was pretty demanding on him, not only directing it, but performing in it and copying the punches as well. Every time I look at the film and see him kicking the shit out of Brian, that's not acting.
He treated me badly.
A master of Kung Fu. He used his art for an evil purpose.
So I've also read this book. I'll go off on a tangent, as all podcasts do, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I also just finished reading this book on Kindle, which is fantastic. I actually should recommend to you. It's called Adventures in the B-Movie Trade. So it's Brian Trenchard-Smith's, basically his autobiography. And there's so many little snippets in there in regards to, things that happened during this movie. But I didn't realize, how many movies this guy has made. He even made, I think, 2 or 3 Leprechaun movies, right?
What? I didn't.
Did you know? Yes,
I didn't know that. I'm gonna have to look up his filmography now.
He did the TV series Flipper. He did that.
What?
Some of that.
Yeah,
yes, I know.
5 episodes.
He did Night of the Demons 2. Still, he did some episodes of Silk Stalkings, which was some TV show.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's Leprechaun 3 and Leprechaun 4 in space.
What did you shoot him with? Steroids? Leprechaun 4 in space.
This barbecue's only just
Directed episodes of Mission
begun.
Impossible.
Yeah, he's done so much stuff, right? He's done a lot of direct-to-video stuff over the years.
It looks like he got started with directing documentaries.
Yeah, his first job, one of his first jobs in the industry, he was putting together movie trailers. That was his first job, was creating movie trailers, and he worked for TV for a while, and then started doing film. Yeah, so very long list of movies. So yeah, I don't know what Tyrannosaurus Azteca is, but it might be worth checking out.
Yeah, there are several here that Pimpin' Pee-wee.
Yeah, I know. How good is it? It's amazing. So the love epidemic, and he also did this thing called Hospitals Don't Burn Down. It was like a documentary kind of safety film for like people that worked in emergency services, and apparently it was quite popular amongst them as well. So he always had this thing for stunts as well. So he was always doing stunts in his movies, and that's where I think we ended up with things like The Man from Hong Kong. Definitely,
It's so funny. I recognize here. There's a movie he directed from 2001 called Megiddo, The Omega Code 2. And I remember watching this when this came out. I rented it on video because it has Michael York as it's like the Antichrist or something. And it's got Michael Biehn. Yeah, it's a terrible movie, but that's the only film of his that I recognize that I've seen.
There you go. And of course, he did BMX Bandits, which was Nicole Kidman's first ever movie.
Oh yeah.
So there you go. We might even do BMX Bandits one day.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah, would be good. So, obviously, about 90% of this movie is set in Australia, but 50% of the co-production budget had to be spent in Hong Kong, and that meant that a lot of interiors, like the Martial Arts Academy, Win Chan's holding cell, Jack Wilton's penthouse, were all at Golden Harvest Studios, and even the Chinese restaurant where Grant Page and Wang Yu have their really long, protracted fight was shot at a real Hong Kong restaurant, which is supposed to be a restaurant in Sydney, right?
Yeah.
And they shot it in Hong Kong. So, I never knew that when I first watched it. And it's quite amazing when you think about it, right?
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
It is impressive. And
there's since you brought that up, I have a question for you here. It's like at times, like, does it feel like a tourism promotion for Australia and Hong Kong? Because it's like for Australia, it's like, here's Ayers Rock, and oh look, there's the Sydney Opera House, and it's like I wonder if that was because of that the co-production had to make it clear that, hey, we did shoot in both places.
Maybe. I think it's a little bit, when I look at it now, it's a little bit cultural cringy. Like, it's a little bit like, oh my God, here we go. Here's the Opera House. Here's Uluru. Here's Hong Kong, you know, but the shots are pretty nice. Like Uluru, like one of the things with Uluru is now you would never be able to do that. So, in his book, he was saying that at the time of making the film, he wasn't aware that Uluru was a sacred site to the Indigenous people of Australia.
Oh,
and at the time, the Northern Territory government was pretty insensitive towards Aboriginal Australians. Who actually weren't even included in the census, the national census, until 1967. Australia actually has, I don't want to turn this into a political podcast, but Australia actually has a pretty poor history with Indigenous Australians, especially in the 50s, 60s, and way before that, there were some terrible things that happened.
Yeah.
So, but the government gave him permission to shoot at Uluru, just hoping that would bring more tourists. That they want it as a touristy thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that he doesn't know. In his book, he was saying he wasn't sure whether or not the government consulted any Indigenous tribes to get there. permission. So it's it's one of those things. Now, if you go, I still love to go there one day. I live in this country. I've never been there, but it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, right? But it's fantastic. And now I watched a show a couple of weeks ago. There's some show on Australian TV where they take 5 different types of people on these holidays. You know, they'll have the family of 4, and they'll have the gay couple, and they'll have you know, these 2 girls from the country, and they'll have, you know, like these, and they put them take them on these holidays. It's actually quite a fun show, right? And they took them out to Uluru, and they took them to this beautiful place where you can go in the evening and have like a really nice meal and watch the sunset over Uluru, and it just looks fantastic. And the hotels are beautiful. But at the time when all this was shot, none of that existed, right? This is 1975. You would just go out there in a bus and wander around it, and you would be able to climb it. So you could see those chains at the beginning of the movie. They were climbing up.
Yeah.
But now you can't go onto the rock at all. So you can go around it. They have like tours that you can go around it and things like that, but you can't climb it anymore. So, which is good actually.
Yeah. Is there anything of note to say about like relations between Hong Kong and Australia at this time? Because I know that it seems like there is some kind of tension there whenever Ling first arrives.
There's a little bit. I'm not sure if some of that's manufactured. Like I think he says some line where the journalist comes in on the kite, and he basically just says that, you know, the relationships between our country aren't great. And
right.
I don't remember that, but 75, I was only 13 years old, so I wouldn't have been very aware of anything like that.
Yeah.
So, but there might have been some testing times. But at the time, I mean, Hong Kong was under British rule till I think 97.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just one of those sort of, you know, places that was kind of like a part of, you know, a little arm of the UK, a little arm of England, until they gave it back.
Yeah. And there, since we're talking about this, because this does relate, but so there are some of these cultural jokes in here about Inspector Ling being Chinese, and he's referred to the Asian flu at one point, for example. And but it reminded me of the same kind of thing that happens in Rush Hour, which, like, one of the things in that is, I think, Hong Kong gaining its independence back, and so that's what made me think of that. But yet, like, Chris Tucker refers to Jackie Chan as Mr. Rice-A-Roni, you know, and so, but it's like in this film, like the Australian guys in the Federal Narcotics Bureau, Taylor and Gross, like, they don't make a huge deal about how they're going to work together. Like, to them, it's very clear, like, you came to extradite Mr. Chan, that's it. Wilton is ours, go back home. But Ling goes off and does his own thing. And so I guess what I'm saying is that I'm a little surprised that those cultural jokes were so few given the time that this came out. Because it's like Ling, Gross, and Taylor don't have many of those cultural clashes. It's more like the tension is arising out of it's like jurisdictional stuff.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely them wanting to get the job done and them wanting credit for it.
Right.
So, especially, is it Gross, the Hugh Keyburn character?
Yeah.
His accent's so funny in this movie. It's so great. And some of the dialogue in this movie is very forced, though. I'm not sure. And once again, listening to the commentary, you can hear Brian Trenchard-Smith kind of almost apologizing, because this was, I think, pretty much his first movie, and he was saying things like the car chase was too long, and there's continuity issues here, and there's issues with dialogue here, and I'm like, yeah, but it is what it is, right? It's a fun movie that's sort of kind of, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the dialogue and stuff are a little weak, but the rest of the movie makes up for it. Like, it has a lot more
for sure
strengths in terms of its action and stuff, and I want to get to that in a minute. But you brought up the accent, and I felt like this would be an interesting thing, you know, given, you know, you're in Australia and I'm here in the US. But I first thought, whenever we meet Wilton, I first thought Lazenby was playing an American because of his accent, just the way I was hearing it. But in places you can hear like his native accent very clearly. And so I was just wondering, like, to you, did you notice that at all? Or
I didn't really think about it that much. He just sounds like George Lazenby to me. Does that sound odd? But
No.
kind of he just sort of sounds like him, right? And
Yeah.
and I think he's great in this movie, by the way. I think he's really good.
He is, yeah.
And, he was, I don't know if you found this out as well looking into it, but I think it was in the book as well, that George Lazenby actually turned down a 3-picture deal for Bond after he made the Bond movie.
Oh, wow.
And he was still kind of smarting from that. I don't know why he would have turned it down. But
I needed some money, and I had a hard time getting a job in the film business because of my record as James Bond. I wouldn't sign their contract, so I was basically blacklisted.
He'd had a moment of glory, and I think he'd accepted the fact that things weren't that big anymore.
Man from Hong Kong was probably the limo bill of the Bond film.
So, but yeah, he's got some of the more, I guess, racially insensitive lines in this movie, like, you know, where he says Chinese make the best servants,
Right. Yes.
and he talks about having a yellow streak and all this sort of stuff, and I'm like, ooh. So,
But it is interesting to know that like he is a trained martial artist himself, and so that he's, you know, like he's able to do a lot of that stunt work himself. And so I think that, I don't know, do you feel like they were also capitalizing on him as like because of the Bond role?
Oh, for sure,
Yeah.
I reckon. Yeah. I'd say for sure, because, you know, he kind of brings that gravitas to the role, and also, even though he's a bad guy in this one, I think he still brings that sort of like, I don't know, he brings a kind of a class to the role as well.
Yeah. And even I think, and he also kind of brings that, what's the word? You know, just that vibe like from the Bond films of that particular period. Like that, I don't know, like this film has like some Bond-ish stuff in it. Like
for sure.
Wilton's penthouse, like the set design looks very much like a Bond villain's, you know, private quarters. But I had another point here. Like the little mind games between Wilton and Ling when they first meet, like very Bond villain-esque kind of confrontation there.
Yeah, especially at the garden party, like at the outdoor thing, which is quite funny as well. Yeah. So it's I think he's great in the movie, though. I really like him in the movie. I think he's good, and the fact that he actually, you know, has some training in martial arts, I think made him look really good in the fight scenes as well. Yeah, I think he was great. I think he's probably almost the best, and he's a great bad guy, right? He makes a really good bad guy in this.
Yeah, he's charismatic. He's intimidating.
Exactly. He's quite good. So a couple of the other things I just jotted down was the revoicing of Jimmy Wang Yu, right? So he was revoiced for this whole movie by, is it Roy Chow? And Roy Chow is a really well-known martial arts star and director and producer, and he played, I haven't gone back to watch it, but he played the gangster who poisoned Indy in the opening of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Oh, wow.
So it's funny how you get all these links, right, to these movies. Yeah,
I love that. I mean, especially like as you do more movies, like, you know, for the podcast and stuff. I mean, just speaking from experience, like you can't help but see all of these linkages between films and actors and people's careers, and how much overlap there actually is.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. It's just, you know, you see these, you find these little snippets of information out, and you go, "What? Really? Okay, fair enough." So, and it's like with Hughes Keith Byrne, right? So he went on and did Toe Cutter in Mad Max, and then obviously I think the last thing he did was Imogen Joe in Fury Road. So yeah, he's sort of done a lot of stuff as well like that. So they all went on, or most of them went on, not all of them. So I don't know what else George Lazenby did after this.
Wow, he's still working. He's in pre-production on 2 projects. Did a TV movie, Is Anybody There? Then he did International Assassin.
He was in Kentucky Fried Movie. Wow.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Do you remember that? Have you ever seen that movie?
I've never seen it. I've heard.
Oh my God.
Jordan's been telling me to watch it.
When I was really into movies, when I got my first VHS player, right, and a mate came around, he brought this around to watch, and I was like, oh my God, this is so good. But I don't know if you can find it anywhere.
I'm not wearing any pants. Film at 11.
Oh, it appears he was on Freddy's Nightmares, that TV series from '89.
Oh, really? Well, there you go.
And Alfred Hitchcock Presents '89. I didn't know that they brought that back that late. But anyway, looks like he's done a lot of TV movies. He's done a lot of TV stuff. He was on Baywatch. Yeah, Batman Beyond. Whatever. What's Batman Beyond? Oh, that's it was like an animated. It was a follow up to Batman the Animated Series.
Oh, okay. So there you go. So he did some voicing as well. Oh, he's done a lot. He's kept himself working, right?
Yeah.
So that's good. Interesting. It was interesting, like listening to the revoicing of Jimmy Wang Yu. What did you think of the voice?
Well, the dubbing is actually pretty good, but it sounds like it's just a guy in a recording studio.
Yeah, exactly.
So when they're outside, like you can hear like the reverb from the room that it was recorded in. So that was a little weird at times. There's a scene whenever he and what's her name, Mrs. Shoot, I lost it. When he's talking to the journalist, they're like on top of a hill, and it's very, very windy, and so her lines are dubbed as well. But you can just tell like the wind is like flapping their hair against their face, and so you know that they had to re-record that. But it's just it's so unsettling because you can tell like the voices don't match. Like
yeah. So I was reading and once again on the commentary, apparently it was a thing done at the time in Hong Kong movies that they would never record voices live. They would always redub them in the studio later.
Yeah.
So anything done in Hong Kong in the shooting was all done that way. So apparently the whole thing with Caroline Thorne, I think is the name of the character, the journalist. Yeah. It was all dubbed later. So So it was really. I thought it was. There were times I don't think it suited. You know how you look at somebody and you hear them talk in a movie like this, and you go, I don't know if that voice really matches that face. You know what I mean?
I thought that too.
So, especially the bit, I love the bit where he, another culturally inappropriate moment where they're having that argument at the gas station, and Hugh Keys-Byrne says something about it's not 55 days at Peking or something.
Yeah, I remember that.
And he turns around and he says, don't give me that shit, or don't give me any shit.
All right, call it.
Oh, shut up, Bob. Hey, enough's enough. Extradite Wing Chun, that's what you came here to do. But everywhere you go, you just commit mayhem, man. Look, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give you my list of contacts. I'll give you every name I've painstakingly bloody gathered over the past 2 years, and you can do the lot of them. This is Australia, mate, not 55 days at Peking.
Hey, don't give me any shit.
Yeah, I think that moment was like my favorite dub because it's like you can tell that the voice actor, was it Chow, is like really trying to oversell or trying to match that energy, because Wang Yu is just, you know, he's seeing red, like his face is just, there's so much angst there.
That one, and the other one was the final confrontation with Jack Wilton at the end, when he's got him all tied up and he's telling him what's going to happen and what he's going to do to sign the paperwork and all that sort of stuff. And the way it's coming out of his mouth is really quite strange, and the way it's kind of, I don't know, what's the word for it? Is it the intonation and whatever? It just sounds a little bit weird.
In China, we often settle disputes over lunch. I hope you will like what I have prepared for you. A 90-second fuse grenade. I have set the timing device for an appropriate period.
Yeah, it was almost like Chow he didn't quite get the attitude right, like, or the inflection, like in that moment, because it sounded very flat, I guess, or
it did,
or just kind of lifeless, like he was just reading the lines on it.
Yeah, it was a bit like that.
Yeah.
So that's So the other thing was we talked about the song a little bit. So the company that was all came about because the company that was handling the international sales thought they would improve the performance of the film by sort of replacing. There was apparently an original song at the beginning of the movie after the Uluru sequence, and they wanted to replace that. So they got in touch with this band called Jigsaw and this song called Sky High that had like a Bondish sort of flavor to it, which I thought it fit really well.
Yeah.
And they placed that under it, and of course you saw it at the end. I thought it fits the movie really well. It actually was a big hit. Like apparently it was number 3 in the Billboard Top Hot 100 in 1975.
Oh wow!
And it was number 2 in Australia, and it was number 1 in Japan 2 years later.
British band, Jigsaw.
Yeah, they're called Jigsaw. Yeah, in Australia they were called British Jigsaw because there was already a band in Australia called Jigsaw. But now when you look them up on Spotify, they're just called Jigsaw.
Are you familiar with any other songs that they've done?
I don't think so. What else have they done? That's the question. On Spotify, Sky High has had 4,898,000 plays. Then the next most popular song, called "Who Do You Think You Are," has had 164,000. So it kind of tells you.
It tells you everything you need to know.
Everything you need to know. So yeah, I this is the only song of theirs that I have actually that I know. I think. Yeah. So I don't think they did much else, but. The song's cracking. I love it. I really love this song. It really, whenever I actually have this on some of my playlists. I have this on I have a playlist for when I'm driving Uber called Uber All Day, or it used to be called that. Now it's just called Music All Day. And it's like goes for like 25 or 26 hours long. And I have this song in there. And whenever it comes up, as long as I don't have a passenger in the car, I always pump it up. It's great. I think it's more nostalgic.
Yeah, well, this is definitely going in my playlist now. It's so fun.
It's so good. It is a fun song. Yeah. So it's really good.
And talking about the music, like the score as well, like it's so much fun. Like it's very heavy brass. It's just pure funky 70s.
Yeah, it's so good, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I actually had some notes when I was doing my run through the other day, and one of them was like, "I just love this music, right? It's so good." Like, there's that bit that when they're doing like at the Ayers Rock at the chase when the guy's driving the car off and all this sort of stuff.
so great.
It's so cool. The music's great, except once again that song. But we'll get to that. Well,
it's funny too because like there are some scenes where you wouldn't think needed music that have music, while there are other scenes where it makes me wonder like why there isn't music there. Because like I think in the fight in the restaurant, like it goes on so long, but it seems like that there should be music there.
I suppose we can have a really quick run through. We won't go line by line through, the whole plot of the movie, but I guess we can just think about, maybe what our favorite scenes were and some of the scenes that were kind of fun. Like for me, I think the intro is killer.
Yeah.
Like
it's a very intense 7 minutes.
It is. It's very intense. And I love the bags have Con Air on them. I'm like, I don't even know. Is Con Air a real thing or is it something they made up? Because
I was going to ask
immediately think of the movie.
Yeah, I was going to ask you the same thing. Like if that was a real thing.
I don't know if it's a real thing or not, but it may have been. I don't know. If I look up Con Air on Google, I know I'm just going to get the movie, right? Later. Okay, here we go. So it says here that Cornellian Airways, later Con Air, was an airline headquartered in Alice Springs. There you go.
Oh.
It operated scheduled flights as well as other air transport services through the Northern Territory from 1939 to 1980. So there you go. So it was a real, a real company. So I love the drug handoff. In the middle of. I always wondered when I was watching the movie why they would do it like it is rock. Like it's so remote to get get a drug courier and a bag man with the money.
Yeah.
All the way to Ayers Rock.
Because Mr. Chan, he like arrives on a tour bus and like the courier is just like hanging off to the side like in a car. And then whenever they get out to take a break or whenever they get out to go and look around the rock, they sit down on that bench and yeah, it's just a very kind of weird situation where they would do that handoff.
Yeah, it is weird. And is it Bob Taylor is the undercover guy played by Roger Ward? He's taking those photos very pointedly eventually. And eventually the guy makes him, right?
Yeah,
and,
being too obvious about it.
It's quite funny. And that guy that makes him, he's the guy who's actually a stuntman driving the car at the beginning of the movie. That crashes the car and everything, yeah. So, it's quite good. And the bit where... I love the bit where they're chasing him up Ayers Rock and they have the fight on Ayers Rock. That's quite good.
That's good too. Like
Uluru.
Yeah, like one thing I noticed about this movie that I really liked in terms of the cinematography is that there are a lot of really great aerial shots or a lot of excellently framed shots with the camera in a high place. And like, so we get the camera on top of Ayers Rock. And so you can just see just the vast expanse, of the landscape. Yeah. And I noticed the cinematographer does this a lot. When they're in Hong Kong as well, like they get really high up and so you can see the skyline. And even when we see like the kite shots with the glider, like we get lots and lots of those. And so there's just a lot of, I guess just those elevated shots give us a sense of scope, to the film.
Yeah, it does. And the fact that it looks the way it does and it's shot on widescreen and it just looks really good. I think he did well for a first movie. So I really liked it. It's just great like that. It looks great. And he was saying this morning when I was listening to the commentary that it's very green around Ayers Rock. That how there was a lot of greenery. Mm-hmm. Apparently what had happened, there'd been a really long drought. There was nothing. And then they had this massive rainfall about a month or a couple of months before they came into film. So everything was just green. And if you go out there now, usually it's just all brown and whatnot. So. The other thing I loved about this was when they catch up to Win Chan, when Bob Taylor catches up to him, and he goes along that line of questioning, like the whole, who sent you? What did you do? What did you do? And it's super cliched, right?
Oh, yeah.
But then he just tells him to piss off or something. Or what did he say? Something about stick your head up your backside.
Yeah. And what's funny is that he says it in Chinese, but yet... what's his name? Taylor seems to understand what he's saying, or he responds.
Exactly.
Like, it's like, oh yeah, well, screw you too, or whatever.
Yeah, and does the old, no speaker to English.
Yeah, no speaker to English.
Yeah.
Welcome to Australia, Mr. Chan. I'm Taylor, Federal Narcotics Bureau. And you're wanted in Hong Kong for robbery, drug peddling, and murder. Oh, yeah, we've been expecting you. So do yourself a favor and answer a few questions. Who sent you? Who do you work for? You're no use to them now?
省点劲儿吧，叫你妈来陪我，我也不会告诉你。
Yeah, and I love you too.
So yeah, so I think it's a really good. The opening's really good. It sets it up really well, and then when it cuts across to Hong Kong, when the Sky High comes on, the music comes on, and you got Wang Chu there doing the police academy or wherever he's at.
Right.
And he's doing the shooting, and then you've got cross cuts with the hang glider, and it really sets the movie up really well, I think.
Yeah, that's a really cool shot when you see like all of the, I guess the police in formation and like against the main titles. Like it's the cinematography is just really well done. I'm not sure who shot this, but they certainly were very skilled. Like they knew what they were doing.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was really well put together. And I love the old thing, like, okay, so Wang Chu's there and he's got the police students, the students there, and he's going to take them all on and pick it, sort of, it sort of shows his machismo right out of the gate and shows what he's capable of and all this sort of stuff. It's kind of like the first, well, it's not really the first fight scene, but it's the first kind of kung fu sort of fight scene, I guess, in the whole movie. Yeah, so it's a good scene as well, and the whole thing with the hang glider coming down, and really interesting that it was landed, when they landed, it was landed on purpose, that Grant Page, the stuntman who did a lot of or most of the stunts in this, and it's him actually in the fight in the restaurant as well, landed the hang glider in such a way that you couldn't see. He sort of had almost like the back to it. You could just see the kite rather than him.
Yeah.
So they could do the cut really well. So yeah, so it's really good. And there's some great views of Hong Kong. Have you ever been to Hong Kong?
I haven't, no.
Hong Kong's beautiful. Like some of the views there, they're very old views, and it doesn't look like that anymore at all. But yeah, it's got some great shots.
It's funny you say that because like in my watch notes, like I just wrote pretty shots of Hong Kong, very favorable.
Yeah, Hong Kong's great.
So,
and what's really interesting is they use the old airport, right? So the whole scene where he's getting on the plane and coming to Australia. That airport used to be basically in the middle of the city. So when you used to fly in, I never experienced this because they opened the new airport before I went there for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
But when you used to fly into Hong Kong, and I think you'll find videos of this on YouTube if you search, the planes used to land basically between the apartment buildings. They'd actually come down between apartment buildings.
Oh.
When you would land. So the planes would almost be on the level or at the level of the apartment buildings.
Oh, God.
When they would come in. So they'd have this really narrow corridor they would have to fly down to land. So, and now the airport's out on an island. They put it out on an island. It's actually really good. You get out there really easily, and it's changed a lot. Hong Kong's changed a lot from 75 for sure. But
how long of a flight is that? Like, would you say
from here? It's about 8 hours, so it's not that far.
Okay.
Well,
comparatively, like
it's not that far in Australian terms,
right?
Yeah,
yeah.
So,
when you flew to the US, that was what, 20 hours or something?
14.
Oh, okay.
14 to LA,
LA,
and then it's usually another 6 to the other side.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So it's about 20 all up. So but it takes to fly from. Well, it's about the same. In the US, it takes, 6 or 7 hours to fly from Sydney to Perth, which is the other side of Australia. So,
wow.
So yeah, but 8 hours isn't too bad. It's doable in a day easily.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Hong Kong's really nice. I actually miss it. I'm really, a bit upset about all the trouble that's going on over there, but it's a really interesting city to explore. I went there a couple of times for work. It's really good. One of the, I think where they're sitting, the scene at the beginning where they're sitting, he says, "Oh, let me," or whatever he says. He takes her for a drive in the car, and they're sitting at that point where they're looking down over. I think it might be Kowloon or over the main city. I mean, there's areas like that. There's Hong Kong is really small. It's just a small island, and they have this place. There's a place called the Peak, and it's like the highest point. And I think where they stop in the car is kind of on the way up there, and the views up there at night are just unbelievable. When you go there now, it's just amazing city. But yeah, it's really the shots there are really great. And then of course he takes her back to her hotel.
Of course he does.
and they decide to he's a very fast worker, right?
He is, yeah.
So, and I'm sitting there watching the movie. I'm like, what's with all the sweat? Right?
Yes.
Did you notice it?
I noticed that too. I thought maybe they had gone swimming beforehand or something, but yeah, it's just like they're drenched.
They're drenched. And I'm like, okay, Hong Kong gets really hot, so maybe they're trying to get the point across that, it must be like July in Hong Kong where it's like humidity is like 100% and but it's like it's over the top. And I noticed on his back. So have you ever seen anyone that's had cupping done on their back?
Oh yeah.
So it's like an Asian thing where they basically have these glass cups or something and they heat them and they sort of suck. And it looked like he'd had cupping done on his back.
I noticed that too.
Like
I noticed he had those red marks.
Those dots.
Yeah, those dots.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, he looks like he's had cupping done on his back. So either that or it was bruises from something else, but it didn't look like bruises to me. So
yeah,
I was just more concerned about the sweat.
I was kind of surprised that they didn't introduce him like in bed with Miss Thorne because, I mean, that's kind of what you would expect in like a spy thriller or especially a Bond film. Like that's where we meet our hero in the arms of another woman. But
exactly.
But it was funny too. She has this line. She says, "Tell me, Inspector, do you often take white girls to bed?" And he says, "Oh, only on Tuesdays and Thursdays."
Wow. You're full of surprises.
So are you, Caroline.
You're my first Chinese.
Will you review me in your column?
Tell me, Inspector, do you often take white girls to bed?
Only on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
That's right.
It's very strange.
There's a strange line, but there you go. So yeah, so that's an interesting scene, and it's yeah, I was kind of like I just couldn't go over the sweat. That was the thing that got me. But and how much of a fast worker he was. So he's gone from like almost arresting her to 5 minutes later bedding her. So,
right.
So I guess they get out of Hong Kong and then they end up in Sydney. And there's a couple of weird things like in this first scene when he flies into the airport. There's that conversation between is it Maury Gross, so the Hugh Keys-Byrne character, and Roger Ward, Bob Taylor, about him coming. And once again, I think it's what you spoke of before, where they're a little bit concerned he's going to tread all over their investigation,
right?
And there's that weird bubbler scene. Did you notice that?
The weird what?
Where the bubbler scene. So there's a scene where they're having a conversation. They haven't met him at the airport yet, and Roger Ward is leaning down to get a drink from a bubbler. Is that what you call them there? Do you call them bubblers?
Oh, we just call them a fountain.
Okay, there you go. I call it a bubbler.
Yeah,
but anyway.
No, I like that. But you're right. That is such a weird moment where one was it Taylor is bending down for a drink and Gross like turns it on for him.
And then turns it off, and he turns it on again and leans back like looks like he's meant to be like peeing or something. It's really strange.
I didn't notice that.
You didn't notice?
No, but
go back and have a look later. It's really weird.
I will. Yeah, that was a very strange scene. Yeah,
apparently it was some of it was like improvised, so I'd say that's
okay,
probably where,
that makes sense.
That's probably why it's a bit weird. Yeah. So it's quite funny, and the bit where the other thing, Hugh Keys-Byrne's character, why he's wearing looks like an old timey sheriff's badge. Have you noticed that?
I noticed that too. I was going to ask you if you thought that was supposed to be a joke.
I don't know what the hell that was, and the belt tucked outside the shirt.
Yeah, that was strange too. Which is
that was so weird.
This reminds me of a point that I meant to ask earlier, but I've seen some critics refer to this as a satire, but I wonder if it is like this isn't Samurai Cop, like this feels like a Canon Films project with how naively over the top it is. And so I wanted to get your take on that.
It's most definitely satire in the movie, and you can kind of see it, right? And
yeah.
The little Keys Burns bits where his character walks up and there's that weird little music motif, like his little theme that comes with him, right?
Good day.
Fancy seeing you.
Weren't planning to keep him to yourself, were you?
It's really cool.
I think that's why there were so many moments that I laughed out loud at that I wasn't sure if I was supposed to. Yeah. Because they
quite weird.
Because so many of the cast like play it so straight at times.
Yeah, that's right. And then I guess we get to the bit that you alluded to further before. So we get another shot. We get let's go for a coffee or a bite to eat, and let's just go and sit down at the Opera House, at the forecourt of the Opera House there.
Yeah.
And with that beautiful 1970s outdoor furniture, right?
Oh, yeah.
But that was a bit of a weird scene. And there's that scene where they're talking about Wang Yu wants to go gambling, and he says, well, it's not legal because it wasn't legal in Australia in 75, right? So but there's obviously all these undercover places. And then Hugh Burns' character pipes up with the whole, but there's lots of politicians there, you can't get anything for the politicians. I'm like, oh, okay, what's that about?
Yeah, that was strange too, because they're like, but there are like 3 places downtown, but we can't tell you the names.
No, exactly.
We're not supposed to know that.
He never went there anyway, so it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
So there was a lot of, it's also in this movie, I think maybe because I'm looking at it from an Australian point of view, there was quite a few over the top, like Australianisms in it. Like there was some really pointed, like, using the term old mate and mate all the time. And I was like, oh, it's a little bit cringy, but it's like, okay, they're obviously, thinking an international audience, and I found out that there was a couple of scenes that were cut when the movie was originally released in the US. The one at the service station was one when they're getting petrol, because they were saying that it was there was too much Australian accent in it or something like that. It was too Australian. And there was one other scene, I think, with a journalist where, once again, that was cut for the same reason, because it was too Australian, inverted commas, in regards to, American people won't understand it, which is kind of strange that they would do that. But then again, you guys redubbed Mad Max into American when it first released.
No way. So, oh, no.
Didn't you know that?
I didn't know
the first release of Mad Max was all dubbed in American.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
in
crazy.
American accents, the whole thing. Because they were like, they'll never understand Australian accents, so we're just going to dub the whole thing. So that's what they did with Mad Max originally.
Huh.
So it's kind of weird. But then this is the 70s, I guess, and we hadn't got to Crocodile Dundee yet.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, since we're talking about like the cultural thing, like, I mean, I wish I'd seen more films out of Hong Kong and Australia so that I could speak to this with a little bit more confidence. But I mean, as someone based in the US, like, I found this very accessible and somewhat universal in terms of like how the cultures are depicted and how the film is structured and the different set pieces it has, like, for the time period. But I was trying to like find like something that stood out to me in terms of its uniqueness. And the one thing that I wanted to point to was just like the level of action here. Like, it's cranked up to 11 and it barely slows down. Like, we get that breather when Ling is recovering, which we'll talk about that scene later, but it's pedal to the metal all the way for the rest of the time. And I can't say that I've seen a film from this period from the US or elsewhere like that capitalized on this much action and did it this well.
Yeah, it never stops, does it?
No.
There's like a few little respites. There's a scene between, I guess we're kind of up to it anyway, where Wang Yu goes to meet the guy in jail, and does him over in jail, and the Australian guys are saying, "Oh, we don't do that here," blah blah blah, and I'm like, "Yeah, come on, of course that thing goes on everywhere."
Right.
And there's that, and then there's that little respite where they're having a conversation around, did he recover? But then we're into the scene where they're taking him to the courthouse,
Right.
and then he's shot, and then there's that. Then we're balls to the wall, 9 minutes of the whole chase through the back streets of Darlinghurst, and then into the Chinese restaurant.
I mean, I know we're going to get to some of this, but I just wanted to just point out for your listeners here, like just like how much is in this film. Like we've got fist fights, car and motorcycle chases, explosions, helicopters, chair breaking, kicking people in the balls, bottles to the head, crossbows, throwing knives, a grenade in the mouth, pipe climbing, people set on fire, jumping through windows, that hang glider. I mean, like, what more could you possibly ask for?
So much. You missed the squirrel grip. The bit where they're having the fight and he grabs him by the nuts.
Oh, yes. Wow.
It's got everything there. You've listed them there. I mean, like, it's just, it never stops. The movie never stops. It never sits still, except for once again, that little recovery scene in the middle. And that's where it goes a bit slow there. I'm like, come on, let's get back to the action again.
Exactly. That's how I felt too.
But yeah. But that scene, like the fight scene where the courier from Hong Kong is assassinated by the assassin, who once again is Grant Page, the guy who did most of the stunts and all the hang gliding in this movie and things like that. That whole chase is just amazing, right? From the minute,
yeah.
And I love his first leap across the gate, across the fence,
right?
Which is almost $6 million man like sort of thing. Yeah, exactly. That was my first thought, right? When he jumped over, I was like, no normal man jumps over that gate. I've been to that court, not in trouble by the way, but I've been to that court, and those fences are high. And no normal person is jumping over them like that. So, yeah, but it's great, the chase across Oxfordshire, because I'm sitting there, as an Australian, you're sitting there and you're watching this movie because it's kind of filmed in your backyard, a lot of it, and you're sort of like, okay, where's this? Okay, this looks like Darlinghurst. It looks like Oxford Street, which is like a main sort of area in a part of Sydney. It's kind of east of Sydney a little bit, but it's in Sydney. You would call it part of Sydney City. But through those back streets of Darlinghurst, and there's all those great little things, like he knocks over the guy with the box of oranges, and he's trying to pick the oranges up, and then he's knocked over again. And the guy with the paint can. I mean, that's really cliched.
That guy, the assassin that he's chasing, like especially whenever they're fighting in the like in the kitchen and in the restaurant. All I could think about is how much this guy looks like 70s era George Carlin. Because he's got the beard and the hair and the turtleneck sweater. And
some of his facial expressions are just classic. Like when he gets him in the squirrel grip, his facial expressions is amazing. I crack up every time I see it. And then there's the split in his undies.
I noticed that too, yeah.
His pants. I was once again the commentary this morning. I was listening to the commentary. Brian Trenchard-Smith saying, well, you could tell we're on a budget because we didn't have like doubles with costumes. So he split his pants, and too bad he split his pants. So that's it's such a great scene though, right? That whole fight in the kitchen, and he's trying to grab the cleaver off the board. And
yeah, it's like in any other movie, like this guy would have just run away by now, but no, he just sticks around. He just keeps bringing it.
He keeps coming. And it's just, it's such a protracted fight. And then they eventually get out into the restaurant itself. And I don't know how many tables they broke, but they must have been at least 3 or 4 tables they broke. And the whole thing, how it ends with him going into the fish tank, right?
Right, yeah.
And the fish tank, apparently the fish tank wasn't meant to break.
Oh.
So what was supposed to happen, he was supposed to go in there and drown or something like that. So apparently Grant Page says that he was thrown in there, it broke, he came out, and he was kind of in shock. And he's like, oh shit, I'm supposed to still be acting here. I better act like I'm dead. And that's why suddenly his eyes open up like the dead look. I said to May, we were watching it with May, my wife, the other night, and I was like, why do people in movies, like especially in the 70s, I guess, when they're dead, they always have their eyes open, like it's just that full-on eyes open. No one dies with their eyes closed. So he didn't know that was going to happen. So he rolls out and he goes, "Oh shit, I better look dead." So he did. It's great.
I love it.
It's so good. I love movies like this where things happen, that aren't meant to happen, and they still end up in the movie. They're so good.
This is where we go to the body shop, right? Or the like the dojo.
Oh yeah, so that's a bit later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they have this big thing. He kills the assassin guy, and then I think there's that they have the scene in the police station where there's a great Hugh Keys burn where he kicks at the camera. And it cuts to the next scene. Remember that?
Yeah.
He's saying something and he kicks at the camera and then they cut to the next scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's the Lazenby intro. So then we go into the bit where he's in the dojo place with his minions. I'll call them minions.
Yeah, minions.
and he fights them all, And some of the guys have these really, did you see the guy that he knocks backwards and he rolls over into the floor, but then he gives himself an extra lift into the air?
Yes.
When
I saw it. I mean, for the most part, like these fights are so well choreographed, but you can tell that there are some pretty soft like hits there that are emphasized by or covered up by like these really intense like punching sound effects. It sounds like something from Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, kind of hits.
And it's always, and once again, talking in the commentary, he was saying that one of the things when you're doing action scenes like this where you've got lots of people is trying to make it look like the people in the background and not just standing around waiting their turn to attack.
Yeah.
Because that's what it always looks like.
Yeah.
He would easily be overwhelmed with 4 people, right?
Right.
But they all take their turn quite nicely. And he was saying in the commentary that he didn't do a great job in some of the scenes with making the guys look like they were, doing something else rather than just waiting their turn. But,
it sounds like Trenchard-Smith was very apologetic in the commentary.
He was a little bit. I think he's obviously learned a lot since he made this movie.
Yeah.
And learned a lot of lessons. So you can see how it was probably a really great learning experience for him as well. Yeah. So there's the Lazenby thing, and then there's that. Then I think that's when they're in the police station. They decide they're going to go and visit. Jack Wilton, and they talk about something about Sydney's more open than Mother Hubbard's cupboard.
Right.
Something like that.
It's a very strange analogy, but yeah, they're like, Wilton owns the city and they're like, let's pay him a visit. And I think that's when they go in and they meet Mr. Willard, who's kind of like his
Frank Thring.
Frank Thring. Yeah. It's like his,
it's so good.
Wilton's number 2 or his little secretary type. There's a bodyguard there who is jacked. He's this stout little guy.
Yeah.
And Ling he's not very good at his job. Ling just goes right through him and bursts through the door. I just thought this guy's going to pose a problem, like getting into this office.
He was no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like later on, the 2 guys that come after him in the hotel, same thing. It was just like really easy.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's scenes around this time, where Wilton's in his apartment, like he's, I've called it Wilton's lair, right? So, and there's orange everywhere. Did you notice all the orange?
Yeah. The aesthetic of this penthouse is, I mean, one, it's very dated. It's very 70s decor, but it also just has that, it reminds me so much of like a Bond, I can't think of the production designer, but it has that same kind of aesthetic, like this very lavish lifestyle with all these ancient weapons, on the wall. He has this arsenal, but yeah, it's just everything's orange, bright, like
it's
velvet.
But I can definitely tell you, like in the 70s, orange was in, right?
Oh,
so those orange curtains, my parents had orange curtains in the 70s, and they had an orange lounge chair, an orange carpet, and they had like these stressed copper artworks things on the wall, and so, oh my God. How did we ever go?
Yeah, it's like looking back, it's like,
know,
what were we thinking? What were they thinking?
I even had like a little record. I had a little record player, a little portable record player, and it was orange. So it was just a thing.
At least everything matched.
Amazing.
Everything was consistent.
Everything matched. Orange or copper. So yeah. So then there's the attack at the hotel, and he easily passes those guys off. So that's the Boulevard Hotel. I'm not even sure if that hotel's still there, but that's in William Street in Sydney. I'm not sure that scene was really required.
No.
I know there was a piece before it where Wilton's saying, get rid of him, he's causing me lots of problems.
Mm-hmm. Okay, for the most part, like, this is very well edited, at least the fights and chases are, but I wish it was more tightly edited, because, I mean, this is an hour and 50 minutes long, and we could easily lose 10, 15, 20 minutes of this, because we do have those little filler shots that, like, if we wanted to speed up the pacing of the story, like, I mean, there's a lot of room to do that.
Oh, for sure. It's a long movie. I thought it was very close to, well, you're probably right. I thought it was very close to 2 hours. I'm like, hell, I mean, even though it didn't feel like it, like I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It is a long movie, right? For what it is. For an action movie. Action movies, what, are generally hour and a half?
Right. That's what I was thinking too. Yeah.
Scenes like that probably could have been gone. The love montage piece, which we keep talking about.
Yeah,
But
we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Yeah,
Corey could have been cut. Could easily have been cut in half.
Yeah,
and some of that car chase as well. Not long after that, could have been cut back a little bit as well.
There's one thing before we move on, like that. I think it's that meeting with Mr. Willard. Whenever this might actually be later, I'm not sure, but stop me if I'm wrong. But they go to him and say, hey, we know that this assassin was in your employment. And he's like, no, we let the guy go a week ago. And like, what happened to him? And Ling says, oh, I killed him. And Mr. Willard is like, oh, well, good for you. In that case, you deserve a cigar. I mean,
yeah, it's really weird.
It's a weird line. And it's really just to set up, whenever he reaches into that box to grab a cigar, that Ling closes it on his fingers. But the line itself is just very strange.
And he snaps the pen or pencil or whatever it is at the same time and says, I killed him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we talked on it before, the Harborside party where, they have their first meeting. So they have their first get together, and they have the big thing at the party. And obviously, they square off, and it's only going to be the first time. There's going to be something else later, and it's and then they come at him with garden implements at the end.
Yeah, this is where we get the crossbow, and he has throwing knives on him for some reason.
I know, I don't know where the throwing knives came from. And there's a scene. Is it at the same party where that they cut straight to it, where the woman's up against the wall? And he's using his crossbow to shoot an apple above a head.
Yeah, I think that's the shot that opens this scene.
That's right. Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah, with I think there's a little bit of the previous line kind of goes over it, which is about he's a very dangerous man or something like that.
Right, right.
You cut to him doing that, yeah, and then everyone applauds him. So
says something about his friends, the kind of company.
I get a feeling a lot of exactly. He keeps great company. But then doesn't the journalist, she says, she picks out a few, like there's a few women there that have obviously had work done, and there's some accountants or lawyers. And so she's like, oh, Jack Wilton will be there for sure, sort of thing. So,
yeah.
But, it's kind of interesting. And they were saying this morning, once again, watching the commentary, that took them 3 or 4 days to shoot that. And that seafood was there all that time.
Oh.
So I would imagine it would have really been stinking the place up by the 3rd or 4th day.
Oh my God.
They probably, I'm assuming at the end of each day, they're putting it into an esky or, some sort of chiller. But
yeah, but that was pretty terrible to work around.
Then we get to the part you're talking about, I think maybe before, where he goes to the martial arts center and he climbs up all the drain pipes.
Right, yeah. Which takes a very long time for him to get up those pipes.
It does. Grant Page does a lot of those stunts where he actually climbs up. I think he climbed up like 3 or 4 floors with no rigging to hold him there.
Wow.
So he just did it free. Yeah. So those shots of him where he's up high and you can see the cars passing underneath.
Mhm.
So that's Grant Page there with no cables or anything holding him.
Wow.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, it
which
looked
is
great.
amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it looked
great.
like it was for real, and so I'm glad that you confirmed that for me.
And then there's the last bit where he climbs in, where Ling climbs in the window, and you can unfortunately see the harness. So what they did is they ran a harness and cabling, obviously to hold it. They don't want to drop him, and they ran it down through the arm. And as he's climbing in the window, you can see a little bit of it, and you can see the hook on the back of his pants as he's climbing in the window.
I didn't catch that.
Well, this is 70s cinema, right? So these days they'd probably just, CGI it out and clean it up, but they didn't do that in those days. And that's the bit where he gets beaten. So he gets beaten up, and now we're getting to he gets beaten up and he gets rescued by the two women in I call it a bongo van, but I guess it's some sort of minibus. And,
oh, yeah.
And they just happen to come along at the right time. And he persuades them to take them to the farm, her father's farm.
Yeah, who happens to be a veterinarian.
A veterinarian. Lucky that.
Yeah.
So it turns out that the guy that was playing that part of the veterinarian, that's actually his property.
Oh.
He lived there. That was his house that they shot it in.
It's a very low budget move there.
Very low budget. I thought it was interesting that he was a vet, but he knew the whole thing about him slowing his heart rate down and
to keep
where he's got
to prevent like blood loss and all of that sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really quite interesting. So what else happens? What else happens? Oh, so the whole go on, you were going to say something.
Like his wounds are treated and they give him soup and stuff, and then we get this long montage of Ling and this girl falling in love, and they're riding horses and swimming, and that music that's playing over it.
And you just know I'm going to put that music under this.
Yes, please. Please do it.
I actually spent ages looking for these lyrics, and I couldn't find them online anywhere. So I sat down last night, my headphones on, and listened. So some of the lyrics are really weird, right? So there's she says, the vocal line is, "Baby, baby, I think I love you, always thinking of you. A man is a man is a man." I'm like, what?
Yeah.
That's what it all goes back to.
A man is a man is a man.
And then man is a man is a man. And then she's like, "Wish I'd never met you, because now I can't forget you, and you are only a man." So there's some really weird, does she like him or not like him? Or?
What does that mean?
I don't know. And there's another verse I couldn't even get. I was like, sounds like she's saying, "Think in time, something depression, I go confession," or something like that. And then they say, "You're only a man."
So they're just throwing in some rhyming words, and
oh my God,
it's nonsensical.
So is a man is a man, right?
Sure.
And that whole montage, that whole love montage, like the riding of the horses and the swimming in the river, and oh my God.
It goes on and on. And we get that moment where she says something like, "Are you well enough for me to make love to you? And he's like, yeah, I think I can stand the pain.
Do you think you've recovered enough for me to make love to you?
I think I could stand the pain.
It's hilarious. And then she does the very 70s thing and takes a bra off.
Right.
And then we're off to the races, as they say.
Yes.
And it's like, oh my God, this has gone on so long. By the end of it, it's like, oh, just do her and be done with it. Be done with it. Get back to the action. So
as much as I hate that scene, I kind of love it because it's just so cheesy and so funny.
Yeah, it is. Oh, I love it for that, especially. I love it for the song more than anything. Like, it's just so, it's so good. It's so
Can't wait to
good. It's
watch
just
this
so
again.
cheesy. Oh my God. It's just so cheesy. The cheese in this movie is so good. It's like, there's a lot. Like, it's not just this, right? There's other bits of cheese spotted throughout the movie.
Just kind of peppered throughout, right. But
Yeah,
here we get a
it's
whole
really good.
serving of it.
We get a whole serving. And then of course, he's recovered. I don't know. How long do you reckon this period of time is between when he arrives at the property and when they leave?
It's very ambiguous. It could be, I'm guessing, maybe a week at most. Something like that.
Yeah. Enough for him to be, strong enough,
Yeah.
to stand the pain, to make love to.
Right.
Then they leave, right? So then they get chased down by the bad guys, Wilton's bad guys, and they get attacked, and there's there's that great 70s music, that dong 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 when he's when they're chasing him.
Yes.
And they put the little limpet mine thing or whatever it is on the back of the van.
Yeah.
With the timer, it looks like a kitchen timer.
It does.
Just stuck on there.
Yeah, I thought it was a kitchen timer or like they just took a padlock or something. It just have like a little knob with the numbers on it.
Yeah, they stuck it on, and the bongo van blows up and rolls down, and then of course she's dead, right? Belinda, what's her name again?
Oh, Thorne?
Angelica.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
that's right.
Angelica. Yeah. Angelica is dead, and Fang Sing Lang has his Mendoza moment with a shaking fist. Remember the bit where he's got and all I could think of was The Simpsons and Mendoza when he's
Hey, McBain, you keep eating them hot links, you're never gonna make it to a pension.
Come on, live a little, Scoy.
No, thank you. Got me a future, partner. I'm 2 days away from retirement. My daughter's graduating from college.
Little Susie's growing up.
And as soon as we nail Mendoza, my old lady and I are gonna sail around the world like we always wanted. We just christened the boat. Oh, yes, sir. Everything's gonna be just Damn. McBain.
Yes?
I'm not gonna make it.
Oh, stop talking crazy.
No. Just do one thing for me. Get Mendoza.
Yeah, I wrote down, now it's personal pursuit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you're like, okay, this is the revenge. Now we're going to have revenge. But then he just puts her down next to like a tree trunk and just leaves her there, basically. And she's never spoken of again. No.
It's like he was like trying to hide her away or protect her from the blast, but she's certainly dead, I think.
She's definitely dead. Well, by the look of him, and he gives her the big hug with the eyes really like, tightly shut, and he's emoting as much as he can, and it's so funny. And he decides to hide them, obviously, so they think he's dead, and but they don't bother even looking at the van to see if there's anyone's fallen out of the van or anyone's still alive. They just go, this is good enough. I'm not going to bother walking down the hill to the van that's on fire. I'm just going to get back in my car and say, yeah, we're fine. It's done. So, and then there's that chase and he steals the guy's car. He stands in the middle. He doesn't even say to the guy, can I use your car? I'm a police officer or something. He just drags the guy out of this Charger. Right?
Sure, yeah.
This blue Charger. Did you know the story behind the blue Charger in this? Right?
No, tell me.
So the blue Charger at the time, this is $5,000 car, which for 1970s is quite expensive. They borrowed it from a car dealer and said that they would repair it and return it when they were finished with it. So they absolutely trashed this car. You know the blue Charger he's driving? Yeah. Right? They trashed this car. It cost them, so Trenchard-Smith said the car was worth $5,000. It cost them $4,800 to repair before they returned it to them.
My God.
And then the dealership sold the car. It turns out that when the movie was released, on its release, the guy that bought the car was at the movies, saw the movie, noticed the number plates were the same as his car, went back to the dealership and said, you said you sold me a new car. This isn't a new car. Look what happened to the car. So they had to give him another car.
Oh, my God.
They admitted that they'd sold him a car that wasn't new. The car had absolutely been wrecked. Could you imagine? And
and to find out that way.
And to find out. But I don't know if I'd want to, I don't know. I'm a bit of a nerd like that. I'd probably go, I want to keep that car.
Yeah, I would too.
Because it's probably worth a fortune, right?
Yeah.
These days, it'd be very collectible. But yeah, and they absolutely trashed that car. And then you've got the other car that goes through the sign, and there's some weird stuff in this.
It's a pretty extensive car chase.
It is. And it's Wang Yu doing all the driving in that Charger too.
Of course.
So and there's the bit with the guy just puttering down the road, and he's slowing them down, and he sticks his finger out the window and gives him the 2-finger salute.
Yes, I saw that.
Which apparently got cut in the UK from the movie.
Oh.
So, because he used 2 fingers.
Oh, okay.
This was the days when that was bad. It was before this.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I'm actually showing you in
Oh, it's fine.
Describing.
It's for illustrative purposes.
That's right. There's that. And then there's the other random one where the car gets rolled and the girl just leans out the side and looks really gruff. And I mean, the car's just rolled over about 4 times. You know that one? The innocent bystander car?
Yeah.
There's all that happens. The car goes through the house, and we end up with a car on fire, and then, well, like I said, you see that Charger at the end, the blue car, and it's just a mess.
Yeah.
And he drives it back into Sydney, and there's that scene where he's driving into Sydney, and there's smoke billowing out of the car.
It's kind of comical.
So they got, apparently with that scene, there was a second unit guy driving the car. They just used second unit or whatever. They just decided to film it going into Sydney. And they just filled it with, I guess, dry ice or something like that to make it look like smoke.
Oh,
you know?
okay.
But they got pulled over by the police and fined for having a car that was unfit to be on the road. Because all these film, right, all these shots, the car chases, all this stuff was done without permission. So it was all done just on bits of road that they found and just filmed. Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's just like this guerrilla filmmaking, right?
Yeah, which, I mean, for a movie that had such a relatively tiny budget, it looks and feels like a huge budget movie. And so it's amazing to see like how much they were able to get away with by using these guerrilla tactics and, you know, a lot of these independent or low budget techniques, you know, to avoid, you know, paying for permits and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We didn't really know what we were doing. We just kind of leapt into it and just tried to shoot the living crap out of it. And some of it was pretty good and some wasn't so good. But all of it was dangerous.
Well, many times I thought I would get killed, that people would get killed or hurt.
The scene at Ayers Rock where the car rolls and blows up. The door flies off. You think, whoa, that thing's getting awful close.
Dangerous stuff. Everybody did it and hope for the best.
These stunties are just smashing cars together and you're in it.
High-speed car chase sequences on open highways without any traffic control, without police permission, without anything. We just shot them.
It would get out of control and spin in front of you and you'd T-bone and you were sitting in the passenger seat. Maybe you had a seatbelt, maybe you didn't. Nobody really worried about that. We saw people hit by cars and they'd just pick them up. You all right? Have a VB, mate. You'll be all right. Just stand there, but make sure you get out of the way a little
It was
earlier.
all shot, all like bits of it he was saying was shot. There was bits around near the Hawkesbury River, which is like far north of Sydney, like we're talking an hour north of Sydney, and bits, you know, the hang gliding when they were doing the hang gliding, and he comes up, Wang Yu comes up in his car, or Ling comes up in his car and does the little slide out behind the journalist car.
Yeah.
They were saying in the commentary that was the third run, and every run he was getting closer, and they decided that that would be enough because they were sure the next time he did that, it would hit the car. And it was the producer's wife's car or something like that.
Shit.
So and all that was shot in a place called Stanwell Tops, which is probably not far from where I used to live years ago, and it's really nice down there. It's on the south coast, but so it's really good insofar as, hey, there's all these places in Sydney I can be. It's like probably if you have a movie shot near you, you sit there and you pick all the places.
Yeah.
And look at all that stuff. Then obviously he drives the car back into town, and he's after Wilton, right, for his final revenge.
And Wilton's just
And
waiting for him.
He is with the submachine gun. And he's shut the door so none of his henchmen can help him. Later on they have to get in there by cutting a hole.
Yeah, he's got this giant
door.
like metal what would you call that? I mean, it's a drop down door, but
yeah, it's like a security door of some sort. Yeah,
like a blast door.
Yeah. And he comes in through the window anyway. So, but that whole scene with the boat was fantastic. Like with him going on the hang glider with the boat on the harbour was quite cool.
Yeah.
And,
Again, just beautiful cinematography there.
Yeah, it's really nice. And that was Grant Page again. And he was saying that when the boat, so when he was being dragged with the boat, and they had permission to go to 300 feet with the hang glider. So he's 300 feet into the air. And they realized that the helicopter that they wanted to film from was only able to come legally to 500 feet to film. So he got them to go up a little bit higher. And they said when they actually dropped the cord that was holding the hang glider, it actually must have taken with the wind and gone higher, and he thinks he was up close to 500 feet in that hang glider.
Oh shit!
when they did that shot, so they got some great shots though. It was fantastic. Yeah, and when I look at, once again being local, when I look at the skyline of Sydney, I'm like, oh my God, there's like nothing there compared to now.
Oh, really?
So, oh yeah, like there's a building called Australia Square, which funnily enough is round, and that used to be the tallest building in Sydney, and now it's probably one of the smallest buildings in Sydney.
Huh.
So
yeah, I mean,
yeah, it's amazing.
This is what 30? What is it?
Nearly 50 years ago, right? Because we're in 2021.
Yeah. Oh wow.
75.
Jeez.
So that's what, 40 something years ago?
Yeah.
Our maths is terrible. But
mine too.
So in 2025, it'll be 50 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's 41 years old.
It's incredible.
Wow. I'm old. But anyway. Yeah, but that's a good shot. And he just happens to land it on the roof of the right place, which is great.
Yeah. I was surprised at this whole big showdown between Ling and Wilton. I mean, it takes place with 10 minutes to go. You know, like
I know,
like
right?
I was thinking like, wow, this is gonna be a very abrupt ending, but we have a nice little confrontation here. At some point, Wilton catches fire, right?
Yes. Did you hear about the accident with that?
I read something, but yeah, tell me what you found out about that.
So Trenchard-Smith talked Lazenby into doing the burn himself rather than having a stuntman. and he actually lit himself up. So he'd done it a few times before, Trenchard-Smith. So he lit himself up and showed him how safe it was, because they used like a gel, and showed him how safe it was. So he talked him into doing it. And what happened is they put this gel on him, and they put the gel on his under his jacket as well, and things like that. Before they shot the scene, Jimmy Wang Yu comes over and squirts some more of the gel on him, because he's thinking it should be more on. It should catch a light more. It'd be a little more spectacular, right? So it catches on fire. And the idea was he's supposed to take the jacket off. You see him taking the jacket off, right? Because the jacket's on fire. But what had happened, because he was wearing extra stuff underneath, and the gel had made it hard for him to get his arms out of the jacket. So he actually couldn't get out of the jacket. But he was told if there's any problem, just hit the floor. Well, just hit my mic. He was told if there's any problems, just hit the floor, and we'll just come over and we'll put blankets over you, etc., etc. But he didn't do it. He kept on going, and he eventually burned himself trying to get it off. Burned his hand or something. And the popular so in the Not Quite Hollywood documentary, somebody says, he went over to Trenchard-Smith and punched him in the mouth. But actually, what happened, according to Trenchard-Smith, was that he came over with his fist raised, as if he was going to hit him, and pulled back and didn't hit him. So I think he was very angry at the time. So they finished it using Grant Page, of course, with the last part. So it's quite once again. But it looks really good on film, right? With him trying to get the jacket off.
I've been set on fire 7 times, and one of those occasions was to show George how you could be very safely set on fire.
All the guys are around saying, hey, this is going to look fantastic. You got to do it.
I duly got lit up. Chinese crew were kind of, this crazy Guaylo, what's he doing next?
And after the director set himself on fire, I thought, geez, if he's going to do it, I'll have to do it.
Knowing that it's really happening, all right? You can't buy that thrill. You can't create it. There's no special effect. But when they actually do it,
George goes through all the movements, and then he had difficulty getting the jacket off. And George starts to feel that he's burning.
My arm wiped out the grease, and the fire just burnt my arm right up here.
I've never seen anybody try to run away from his own arm so fast in my life.
Grant tackled him to the ground, and we put the blanket on him. George was understandably furious.
He threw a punch at Brian Trenchard-Smith.
No, I didn't.
He jumped up and went whack, and Dick Trenchard whacked him and, not nearly broke his jaw.
I don't remember punching him. If I did, I'm sorry.
Gosh, you're not even allowed to light a match on a set now without full safety officers and things like that.
Yeah, it's a great effect. And really quickly, you'd mentioned that documentary.
Yeah.
Is it Not Quite Hollywood? I know here, at least in the States, there's a free streaming platform called Pluto TV where you can stream that for free right now. So if anybody out there wants to go check that out.
I think it might be also on Amazon Prime. I think I saw it on Amazon Prime, but I got the usual not available in your area, in your geography. And that's a great documentary, and that's where a lot of these films will come from. Have you seen it?
I haven't. I watched the excerpt from it that talks about this movie because it's included on the Blu-ray, which I'm sure we'll tell people more about that.
So we have the big fight, and we have the grenade in the mouth, and I don't think we're spoiling much by saying that George Lazenby's going to die at the end,
right?
And I'm sure, so do you think? So it's definitely an accident when the pin pulls out of the hand grenade, right? I don't think Ling's expecting it, right? Because the whole idea was, I'm going to leave this pin in here. When you sign your confession, then I'll remove everything, right? But then the guy freaks him out coming in the window as well. The guy he fought on the roof. There's that one guy on the roof. And for some reason, he pulls the pin out then. And then he's got 90 seconds because he's already said you've got 90 seconds. He pushes him into
that vault.
And there's those beautiful...
and it's full of other explosives.
They make it super obvious, right? That they zoom in really quick on something that says, does it say bombs? or something that's it's like make it really obvious. And then George Lazenby has these great bug eyes. His eyes are bugged out, as they would be, I imagine, if you had a hand grenade in your mouth and you knew you had 90 seconds left. But I'm like, the tape that he put it on with, looks, first, where did he get it from? And second, it's like painter's tape, so it's like paper. You could easily tear that off. Mind you, you're still stuck in the vault. You're still stuck in the vault, but
yeah, you're gonna die a horrible death no matter what.
See, these days they would shoot footage of the grenade going off in his mouth. I'm sure it'd be very gory, but
sure, yeah,
kind of like it the other way better. Yeah, and then so then he abseils down the side of the building, which again was once again Grant Page, and gets to the bottom, and of course the explosion happened.
Yeah, it's a great moment where you have, what's his name, Taylor and Gross. Is that right? Yeah, and I forgot what the line is, but Gross says something like, "What else did you leave us?" or something, and then that's when the explosion goes off. And it's massive, and then everybody just starts laughing.
That's very Australian, but yeah.
And then then they immediately roll that song
back into hi-fi.
Roll credits, yeah.
It's and that explosion, right? They did that explosion. They basically put mortars, small mortars, flame mortars on the windows. And then they put a large mortar on the roof. And they had it all arranged with the local fire authority that they were going to do it. And they were supposed to be doing it at I can't remember, was it 4:00 in the afternoon or something like that? They were all set for it, but then there was issues and they couldn't do it until 4:15 or something like that. And in the meantime, there'd been a shift change at the fire department. And so the thing goes off. All the fire department people on the new shift don't know what's going on. And they get there and suddenly find the last shift guys all standing there watching it happen at the same time. And at the same time, apparently all the 911 for you guys, but 000 here, all those lines are going off because apparently you could see the explosion from miles around. So people are like, and no one had put it into the media or anything, because a lot of time they'll put it into the media, I guess, so you can expect it. But there was apparently the switchboards were jammed with people saying, "Oh, there's massive explosion in the city." But it looks great. I mean, the explosion looks fantastic.
Yeah, and again, just taking into account the budget that they had, the resources they had to work with. I mean, it was a very satisfying explosion and a very satisfying,
it was
yet
very
abrupt ending.
Right? It's bang, then the laugh.
Yeah.
Roll credits, yeah.
Roll credits, yeah. Which I feel like was kind of on par for I feel like there were a lot of films in the 70s and even in the early 80s that the ending was almost immediate after the climax. A few months back I watched Children of the Corn again, and it's as soon as the action is over, bam, the credits are right there. You're, as a viewer, you're like, wait, that's it? There's not going to be any kind of wrap up or,
You don't even think about getting post-credit scenes or anything like that as well.
Earlier on, we would get credits. We would just get the opening credits. Everything would be stuffed in there, and then there would be no end credits, way back, in the 30s and 40s.
May was watching some old movies from the 50s or the 60s that she'd recorded on TV, and because she likes those sort of movies, and I was there at the end of the movie, and all that happens is it comes up the end, a Golden Mayer film, and that's it. It's all done. Well, it's the original Dracula, right? I think that's one of the ones I can remember where at the beginning of the movie they show you the cast at the beginning of the movie, and then at the end it just ends, right?
Right.
Yeah, so
yeah.
It's interesting how filmmaking has changed. And now you've got these, credits of movies now. They go for 15 minutes, It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's nuts. But
it's crazy.
And then you've got, you got your post-credit scene stuck somewhere in the first bit of credits, and then you don't know whether you should stick around for the end to see if there's anything more. And so it's all over Red Rover, and and we're done with The Man from Hong Kong. Any closing thoughts or any thoughts in general about the movie?
Very simply, I would say this is a quintessential 70s action film that would be a blast to see with friends at a drive-in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as I said earlier on, this is an era and a genre that has been kind of a blind spot for me for a while, but I had an absolute blast watching this, and I'm so glad that you suggested this for the episode, and I'm going to tell everybody to watch it. And yeah, did you have any final thoughts?
For me, it's kind of like a bit of a time capsule, right? A lot of the time when I look at these movies, I'm like, okay, it's 75, and I'm looking at things. I always seem to go for things like the decor. I talked about everything being orange, and but I thought it was a really good movie. I thought it's like it is. It's absolutely action packed. There's no let up, except for that terrible song in the middle. Mm-hmm. It just goes. It's always being propelled forward. There's nothing really, and that's why I think the ending also is a little bit abrupt, because you're being propelled forward for like nearly 2 hours. And all of a sudden it just stops.
Right,
and you go,
right.
Okay, it's finished. I think George Lazenby's fantastic in it. I think he's really good. I actually think most of the cast are pretty good. There's no one that's really, doesn't really do their job well. Jimmy Wang Yu's quite good, I think. He's a pretty good action guy,
Yeah.
Hugh Keys Burns weird, but I really love his character. He's a really good character. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good
Roger
character.
Ward is good. It's funny, I saw him in that, and then I don't know if we'll do it later, I'm not sure. There's a movie called Turkey Shoot that Brian Trenchard-Smith did. And it's a bit like, the old movie Most Dangerous Game. So it's like, it's based in this concentration camp where rich people come and hunt people, and then they obviously turn on their captors, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. Anyway, he's in that movie. Roger Ward's in that movie, and he's like a sadistic guard, but he's got his head shaved, and he's got this mo. He looks really. I'm trying to place the two together, and it's like, wow, he really, did a lot of different things. That's a really good movie too. I can't wait to do that one. That's on Shudder, I think. So. Well, it's on Australian Shudder anyway. Yeah, that's a hoot of a movie, that one. I haven't seen that for a long time. But yeah, so I thought, everyone's really good. Like I said before, I think some of the scenes might have been helped if it was cut down a little bit. It's a fun movie. It's pretty much, it's a great, I'm a sucker for Leave Your Brain at the Door movies. And it's definitely one. It's
me too.
One of those. So I'm not a...
We need those right now.
And it's a real breath of fresh air, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was a nice little mini holiday, from my day. Get lost.
And you got the Umbrella Blu-ray, and that's got so many extras on it.
Yes, yeah, I picked it up. I think I got that on eBay. It was an import, but it was a seller here in the States, and I think it's on Amazon as well. It's about $16 US, and it's totally worth it. I mean, it's got a bunch of special features, like you said. It's got a commentary, of course, but the one thing I was most surprised about is that it includes 5 other features.
I know. It's got Stunt Rock, which is a movie I want to do on this podcast as well.
And some of them even have their own commentaries and special features. Yeah, I mean, for the money.
Oh, yeah, it's really good.
Steal.
I haven't even really got into... I started watching some of it, but I was like, I'm really having to get back into some of these. I definitely want to have a look at Stunt Rock, and there's a few other things on there. I think there's Dangerfreaks or something, which is some...
Dangerfreaks, Kung Fu Killers.
There's a lot of stuff. He was really into all that sort of stuff. I think early on as well, Brian Trenchard-Smith, he had a movie magazine that he published early, and he published like a Kung Fu magazine. And when hang gliding was the big thing, he had a hang gliding magazine. And so he's done a bit of everything. I'd love to get him on the show. That would be classic, because there's so much stuff to talk. So he lives in Oregon now, of all places.
Oh,
which is great.
That is strange.
Yeah,
you should definitely do that.
He'd be really fun. And his book is fantastic. So definitely worth a read.
So listeners in the U.S., if you go to Amazon, you can rent this movie for $1.99. And it's, I mean, again, like I said, it's absolutely worth it. And it's the same umbrella transfer that's on the Blu-ray.
The transfer is really good too.
Yeah. And I like that it's not too polished. Like it still has that kind of grit, and there's a few little, imperfections in the picture, but I think that just gives it character and elevates or heightens the whole experience, kind of transports you back
absolutely
to that time.
Does. Cool. All right. So I think we've pretty much talked that one out. So Brandon, where does everyone find you?
You can find me on Twitter at the Brandon Hardy. I have 2 podcasts you can check out. One is Varicon Video. It's a video store themed podcast that covers movies from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. You can check out that show at VariconVideo.com or follow it on Twitter at VariconVideo. And I also do a side podcast with my friend Lewis from Random Movie Roulette called The Gory Picture Show. And we talk about a lot of 70s, 80s, even we've done some 60s, like exploitation films and gore films, the kind of films that you might be a little ashamed for watching. And so you can check out more about that show at gory_show on Twitter.
Awesome. I didn't know about that. There's another one I didn't know about. So there you go.
Yeah, it's been fun. Like love to have you on too, because we've had Jacob and Tab and James Dean and Mike, Lewis, of course, Jack. So we're trying to bring on all the monster kids.
Yeah, because I was thinking of Lewis. Yes, I was listening to Random Movie Roulette, and I was thinking, some of those guys would be great to have on as well. So, yeah.
Lewis is especially like a really great guest.
Yeah,
and he's so funny, so damn funny.
All right, so we will end it there. So thanks very much for listening. And after this short break, I'll come back and let you know what we're up to next.
Australia, what's your favourite sport?
Football.
Snake?
Pies.
Animal?
Kangaroos.
And what's your favourite car, Australia?
Holden.
Let me see, that's football, meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars, huh?
Right.
Well, you sure sound like Australia to me.
We are.
Well, then you better tell me again, because I just might forget.
We love football, meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars. Football, meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars.
That's football, meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars.
Football and meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars.
I think you better tell me again.
We love football, meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars.
In case you're wondering, this commercial is brought to you by football, meat pies, kangaroos, and Australia's own car.
They go together underneath the southern stars. Football and meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars.
Makes sense to me!
Thanks again to Brandon for guesting on this episode, and to all of you for listening. Don't forget, you can follow a Dingo Ate My Movie on social media. On Twitter, I'm at Dingo Movie. On Instagram and Facebook, it's at Dingo Movie Pod. I love getting feedback, so please, if you have a minute to spare, I'd be very grateful if you could leave a review over on Apple Podcasts, or alternately drop me a line at pete@dingomoviepod.com. In our next episode, I'll be joined by Tab from Test Pattern to talk about another Brian Trenchard-Smith movie. This time, it's Dead End Drive-In from 1986. But until then, goodbye and see you all next time.
Remember him when you look at the night sky.
Have you ever bought or rented a videotape that wasn't quite right? It may have been a pirate copy.
Chain in those handcuffs. It's high tensile steel. It'll take you 10 minutes to hack through it with this. Now, if you're lucky,